Narayanam namaskritam naram chaivam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya mudirayat nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utama shlokir bhakti bhavati naishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 8th chapter, text number 30. Is that correct? Janma karma cha visvatman. Janma karma cha visvatman. Ajasya karturatmanaha. Ajasya karturatmanaha. Tiryanishishu yadhashu. Tiryanishishu yadhishu. Tarayanta vidambanam. Taratyanta vidambanam. Janma karma cha vishvatman. Ajasya kartu atmanaha. Tiryan nrishishu yadashu. Taratyanta vidambanam. Janma karma cha vishvatman. Ajasya kartu atmanaha. Tiryan nrishishu yadashu. Taratyanta vidambanam. Others? Janma karma cha vishvatman. Ajasyat kartu atmanaha. Tiryan nirshishu yadashu. Taratyanta vidambanam. Others? Janma karma cha vishvatman. Ajaskartu atmanaha. Tiryanishishu yadhashu. Taratyanta vidambanam. Janma karma cha vishvatman. Ajasyu kartu atmana. Tiryanishishu yadhashu. Janma, birth. Karma, activity. Cha, and. Vishva Atman, O soul of the universe. Ajasya, of the unborn. Akartuhu, of the inactive. Atmanaha, of the vital energy. Triyak, animal. Nri, human being. Rishishu, in the sages. Yadasu, in the water. Yat, tat, that. Atyanta, veritable. Vidambanam, bewildering. Translation. Of course it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst the animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. Of course it is bewildering. Repeat. O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The transcendental pastimes of the Lord are not only bewildering, but also apparently contradictory. In other words, they are all inconceivable to the mind. They are all inconceivable to the limited thinking power of the human being. The Lord is the all-prevailing super-soul of all existence, and yet he appears in the form of a boar amongst the animals, in the form of a human being as Rama, Krishna, etc., in the form of a rishi like Narayan, and in the form of an aquatic like a fish. Yet it is said that he is unborn and he has nothing to do. In the Shruti mantra it is said that the Supreme Brahman has nothing to do. No one is equal to or greater than him. He has manifold energies, and everything is performed by him perfectly, by automatic knowledge, strength, and activity. All these statements prove without any question that the Lord's activities, forms, and deeds are all inconceivable to our limited thinking power. And because he is inconceivably powerful, everything is possible in him. Therefore, no one can calculate him exactly. Every action of the Lord is bewildering to the common man. He cannot be understood by the Vedic knowledge, but he can be easily understood by the pure devotees because they are intimately related with him. The devotees therefore know that although he appears amongst the animals, he is not an animal, nor a man, nor a rishi, nor a fish. He is eternally the Supreme Lord in all circumstances. Translation, again by Srila Prabhupada. Of course it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum longayate giram yatkari pataraham bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. Krishna is unknowable in the sense that no one can fully understand him. Unless one fully understands him, he is not eligible to associate with Krishna in the spiritual world. Sometimes he appears like a man. When he appears like a man or a human being, sometimes he is derided. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, Abhijananti Mamudha, that fools deride him when he descends to this earth. People think that he is ordinary because he perfectly plays the role of a perfect human being. When he was a child, he cried real tears. He played the part so perfectly that his pure devotee Yashoda thought of him as an ordinary child. She didn't see him as the Supreme Lord, even though he exhibited many transcendental, unbelievable characteristics. She thought, well, maybe he's a great demigod, but I'm not going to worry about that. Krishna had many difficult things to do when he was here. He had to sometimes fight and kill demons. He had to kill Kamsa. So he appeared to be an ordinary person doing ordinary things. Because he is inconceivable, he is known as Achintya Beta Tattva, inconceivably one and different. Very hard to understand. The word Achintya means inconceivable. It's actually impossible for us to understand who Krishna really is. Sometimes Krishna played like an ordinary being, but he also had to do things that were extraordinary. His followers, like all the acharyas, had, as Sitala has told us many times, had to fight against their detractors. It was not an easy thing to establish Krishna consciousness in a very materialistic world. Even in India, which is not so materialistic, it was sometimes very difficult. There are traditions that are very atheistic, even in that part of the world. Prabhupada himself was a great fighter, and that fighting spirit existed right from the beginning. I have a friend who was very small and frail, a lady, who was strictly Platonic, of course, was strolling in Vrindavan in a lonely spot and was attacked by a very big and fearful man. Because she had learned martial arts, she was able to, on being attacked, to defeat him. Sometimes it is necessary. Even Maharaj Pariksit and many great Mahajans like Bhishma had to learn the art of, and Dronacharya had to learn the art of fighting. Prabhupada himself was a great fighter. The first time I ever saw him get angry was when he took us on a field trip to upstate New York. That was in late 1966. Some people in Prabhupada's audience objected. They weren't devotees. Objected to the fact that he was saying that Krishna is a person. Prabhupada was saying something, and during the question period, they asked him, "Isn't it true that they said a very popular saying at the time, 'I'm a bubble, make me the sea'?" So without answering, Prabhupada asked his question. He said, "Is the gold in the ring the same as the gold in the gold mine?" They didn't answer. So Prabhupada insisted, and he said this again and again. And each time he said it, I saw his eyes grow wider, his face grow redder, and he was exhibiting symptoms of anger. The first time I ever saw this, he was encountering people who were convinced of impersonalism. Finally, after about 3 times, they sheepishly had to say yes to the fact that the gold in the gold ring is the same as the gold in the gold mine. Prabhupada went on to explain the principle of Achintya Bheda Tattva, that the gold is the same in quality, but in quantity it is very different. So very reluctantly they had to accept that. When the British government stopped the Rath Yatra festival, they wrote a letter saying that it was going to be banned. Prabhupada was very angry. He wasn't in England at the time. He was in another city. They made a recording of what he said, and because this cassette tape recording was sent to England, we knew we had to act. Prabhupada was acting in a very almost militant, belligerent mood, and he said some very heavy things. Thank you. If we have time, I'll read some of what he said. Some of that. It was on a morning walk. It was on a walk. He was in a very fighting spirit. He condemned the police force, saying that if we had done something wrong, which had happened, nothing is perfect, that some police action should have been taken at the time, not that they said after almost a year or several weeks or months later that the festival would be banned. So we knew I was in England at the time, so we knew he had to act. And the first thing we did was went to the police station in charge of Trafalgar Square. And the very first words out of the inspector's in charge's mouth was, "Get out." He didn't want to speak to us. His conception was that we had desecrated a sacred monument. In a way it is a sacred monument, Trafalgar Square, but he wouldn't talk to us. So then we took the matter further, and we garnered a lot of support from people that were in the equivalent of the American Civil Liberties Union. I forget what they're called, something about civil liberties, and some Indian people. And it resulted in us actually going against some very top people, big inspectors in Scotland Yard. And several weeks later, because we made a very big protest, we had a meeting. Present were the Indian people from India, people from the Civil Liberties Union, and a few other people, and a few devotees, and inspectors from Scotland Yard. It was up on a very high floor, and he was a fairly highly placed officer in Scotland Yard. And as a result, we did have the festival. Not exactly as it was. There was a bit of a compromise that was made. The deities were brought to Trafalgar Square in a palanquin, not or a palanquin, as they say in other countries, palanquin or palanquin. And that was in a very bright silk-covered palanquin. It wasn't an ordinary palanquin. So this is what some excerpts from this tape. It is Prabhupada is saying that it's racial discrimination. They thought, now these Englishmen, they'll make what is there. There is nothing. Simply some dry words. And actually, he's talking with a few devotees, walking and talking. And actually, they're seeing nobody's coming to the church. So in this way, if some relish something better than whatever is there, I'm reading, will be finished. I'm not saying a lot of details. I mean, this is actually public record. If you want, you can look it up and find it. But I'm not going to say everything. Prabhupada. We shall burn it down. We shall not give to Bhaktivedanta. When devotees were trying to purchase a church in Toronto, we found out that they didn't want to sell it because they didn't like the devotees. We shall burn it down. They are seeing practically. After all, they are businessmen. Speaking of the British government. Shopkeepers' nation. They see practically that if such kind of movements go on, people already have no interest. In Chicago, they wrote, American Hindus. They wrote in the paper, then Hindu religion will be prominent. I'm reading, but what you don't hear is the long pauses. Sometimes they were up to 60-second pauses. You could tell there was no one speaking. So Prabhupada obviously was thinking. And a lot of the great warriors in the past, like Napoleon and Alexander the Great, they were also strategists. They were brilliant. They used to think very carefully before they attacked, before they adopted the use of certain instruments, javelins and so on and so forth. So you could tell that Prabhupada was actually thinking about what to do. So he said, then what will wealth do? It does not appeal to the people. What will wealth do? In Chicago also, they came with some wooden signboard. You have seen? Devotee. No, I didn't see. They are showing me. So it has been criticized by the newspaper men that, quote, nobody cares for you, end quote. And they all laughed. And then another devotee says, in New York, we have to do negotiations very secretly because if they find out, they would not want to sell to us. They would be afraid. And then Prabhupada says at one point, you are not very strong GBCs. There must be vehement protest meeting. And he goes on to say, simply for some technical mistake, they can warn that, quote, you must do it, otherwise it will be stopped, end quote. How is that? That means this is police government. Does it mean it is police government? Devotee responds by saying police state. Prabhupada responds saying police state. And why they are declaring Commonwealth or British Commonwealth. So this may be a little bit anti-British, but it's part of the public record. It's in a few places on the internet. Simply for some technical mistake, how can they warn that you must do it? Otherwise, it will be stopped. They should have taken immediate action. Why did they not take? So he's saying indirectly, he says later on, that because they didn't take action immediately against the people who desecrated, so to speak, the sacred monument, that it was actually a conspiracy. And if we simply cede, he went on to say, there is no future hope of this movement. Better, in spite of their, quote, no, end quote, order, we shall take. Then he goes on to say, make the Rath as it is and keep it in the Hyde Park. Again, there's long pauses where you can tell that he's thinking about what strategy to use, how to attack in a careful way, and how to win on the attack. Make the Rath as it is and keep it in the Hyde Park. That was the starting point, Hyde Park. He went down Hyde Park, down a lane, Park Lane, yeah, to Trafalgar Square, round Piccadilly to Trafalgar Square. Under protest, we are not moving, but this is discrimination. Organized like that. We have Rath standing there. Unless order is given and go on holding meeting, that will be the right answer. And then a devotee says, they can bring the Rath on a big truck. And Prabhupada says, and tell them it is a police government. Then we shall give up British connection. Agitate the government that it has become a police government. And he goes on to say, if you take these steps, do it. Otherwise, sleep. Or even if he does not say, you go on and all organize. It is a very important thing, and things are not going right there. You shall sleep here. That is not good. Then I'm leaving sections out. He goes on to say, there's a pause, and then he goes on to say, if they say, no, you cannot keep even the Rath, that means there is conspiracy. There was two fight in Indian history. One is Rama and Ravana. Now you have not seen the Vaishnava. There was two fight in Indian history. One is Rama and Ravana. One is Kurukshetra. And the hero is Vaishnava. We are going to produce such Vaishnavas, not these dull rascals sitting down. We are going to produce such Vaishnavas, not these dull rascals sitting down. We don't want these Vaishnavas, sitting down rascals. We want Arjuna. We want one. That is Vaishnava. That is wanted. So this is a scriptural reference that there were actually two big fights in the history of Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. The fight against Ravana, where Rama was victorious, and the Kurukshetra fight, in which Arjuna and company were victorious. It's interesting, Mandakini gave me this book called The Men Who Killed Gandhi. He was called the father of India, so you don't say things against Gandhi or do anything against Gandhi in that part of the world, because then it's very sacrilegious, so-called. At any rate, this person who assassinated Gandhi was ultimately executed, because he was in fact a criminal. But in his defense, he said that he made reference to these two battles: the battle of Ravana, Rama against Ravana, and the battle of Kurukshetra, in which Krishna was victorious. It's interesting that he used these scriptural references for his own purposes. It's said that the devil may cite scripture sometime in English. One who has got life, Prabhupada goes on to say, and he quotes his Guru Maharaj saying, Prana arte yanrase hetu pracharo. Quote, one who has got life, he can preach. The dead men cannot preach. So you become with life, not like dead men. If you want an easygoing life, showing the deity and then sleep, that is failure movement. Can you imagine what it was like for us to listen to this, Prabhupada saying these things? He was saying it in a rather calm voice, but it was very heavy stuff. It was showing that he was not taking this lying down, or as the used car salesmen say, he was not taking it laying as a lay down or as a rollover, as they say in England. And then he says things that are kind of like almost sacrilegious, because he's implicating the royal family. Anyway, I won't read all that. That's very heavy, very, very heavy. And then he rails against some devotees, including the one who did a few things against the Trafalgar Square monument. What is he doing now? And he said that he should not be allowed to leave Africa. And then he talks about a few more devotees, and he said that they have a plot they're going to take over. I know what it is, but I won't say now. So it's a very, very, very heavy conversation. And you could feel that Prabhupada was actually quite angry during this. He was against the whole government. And the result was that we won the fight, in a sense. We won, because there was a Rath Yatra the following year. Even though it was banned, even though we made a small compromise. And in the present day, the Raths are displayed, not right in the square, but right on the road, right above the square, in front of the National Gallery, I think it's called. Yeah, the three Raths are parked there. It's almost in the square, but not quite in the Trafalgar Square. And in the square, we have freestanding exhibits, like these 3 by 3 meter tents, all freestanding. And it's going on. Prabhupada said there were thousands of people, and they knew that it was a wonderful thing, so how can it be stopped? And he accused the government of being prejudiced, of being racially and religiously prejudiced. And this was his strategy, and this won the day. So then the devotees that he was talking this with on his morning walk said, well, we should make the phone call to England at the moment and tell the local GBC about all this. Should we do it now, or should we wait till after class? And Prabhupada said, just use your discretion. But the tape ultimately was a cassette tape was mailed to England, and we knew we had to act, and we acted. Actually, we filed threatened. I don't know if we actually filed a lawsuit against the government minister who wrote this letter, who was who actually wrote the letter, but who was responsible for the letter. And we got a front page article published in an Indian newspaper, and we did what Prabhupada had said, that we said that the British government had stopped the most sacred festival of the Hindus. And when the government saw this, they became very disturbed. And that resulted in this meeting in Scotland Yard, because it was a very, very heavy statement that we were going to file a lawsuit against people in Scotland Yard. So if anyone has any questions you'd like to ask, I'll try to answer them. But that's what happened. It's a bit of history, and it's all recorded. It's there. It just shows that Vaishnavas sometimes have to fight. I mean, we even know that Maharaj Pariksit, he drew his sword upon a person who was persecuting a cow. I don't know what the result was, but they sometimes, even Raja Rishis had to do unpleasant things. They had to learn the art of fighting. And even Bhishma, who was very elderly, older than I am, was a great fighter, and he was the general in chief. People at Scotland Yard, I think we generally have a pretty good image in England, and maybe that's why Srila Prabhupada adopted this story. When Scotland Yard heard that there was a group called the Pandava Senas, they sort of knew that Sena had a military dimension to it. So they phoned the person who was then in charge of the communications and asked him about the Pandava Senas. They made a phone call to him, and they said, do we have to worry about these people? Are they terrorists? Are they going to set off bombs and so on? And he said, no, you don't have to worry about them. They're okay people. We're all right. And then the people, they didn't take any action. The police in Scotland Yard didn't do anything against the Pandava Senas, because even though that name sounds very militant, they were very peaceful people, and their protests were, although they were against, they didn't do anything violent, like the terrorist groups do sometimes today. So any comments or questions? Yes?
Just maybe you can mention what the devotees did to upset the police.
What did the devotees do to upset the police? Well, the biggest thing we did was we threatened to sue one of the top people in Scotland Yard, and that disturbed them very much. And they knew that we were not going to give up without a very brutal fight.
I mean, originally,
Well, what damage was done? If you're asking what damage was done, you can speak to me after class, because I don't want to tell, because this is going all over the world, and it's not that it's private; it's public. But it's not easy. You have to dig for it. It's there. But what really upset the police was that we were going to file a suit, which was totally legal and above board. That really did upset them. But they knew that we weren't going to take this lying down. Yes.
I'm wondering why Srila Prabhupada had such a fighting spirit against the authorities. Usually nowadays we'll see.
Well, he was, as Sitala has told us, in the line of the Acharyas, who even in India there was there were a number of apasampradayas, the people who were against Vaishnavas, and they were very vociferous and very active. And even today, most of people in that part of the world think that Brahman is the highest principle, that Mayavadism or becoming one with is the highest principle, and they think that chanting is sentimental. Prabhupada does write in the second canto in a purport that religion without science can be fanaticism, whereas science without religion is speculation. So he was very adamant, but he was also following in the footsteps of people like Krishna himself, who fought many demons, Lord Chaitanya and the Acharyas, who they weren't going to. It wasn't easy. I mean, as Sitala mentioned, to build a temple with white people and ladies involved very intimately with deity worship in Vrindavan was very much against the mood of the people. But he did it anyway, and he was successful. There was an article about Prabhupada. I don't know if you ever saw this poster. Some of you may remember in the United States, there's a poster of a guy pointing his index finger like this. Uncle Sam needs you was the slogan. And this guy was dressed in a red, white, and blue hat, and he had a white beard. It was like the proverbial, or, Uncle Sam, meaning the government wants you. So there's a picture of Prabhupada. There was a picture of him pointing his index finger like this. And the article, which wasn't very long, it was like an extended caption, was saying that he wasn't an ordinary holy man. He wasn't the holy man in what we think of as a holy man, just tolerating everything, passive resistance. And at one point he said that Gandhi was trying to say that Bhagavad Gita was advocating passive resistance, that his movement of passive resistance, which ultimately turned the people against the British rule, was wrong. It was he said that it was right that the Bhagavad Gita, but devotees sometimes, generally they're pacifists and they're quiet and tolerant, but when certain situations arise, they become like fire. That does happen. And it has happened in the past. Even after Prabhupada's departure from this world, there were instances where devotees fought for the right to preach and to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. Yes?
I was just going to say, reminded me of Jesus is particularly famous for being turning the other cheek and
Mm-hmm.
mild mannered and so on. And he actually, when he was, I think, 12 or 14 in the temple, he, through they were selling things, on
Mm-hmm.
like some of the temples in India do actually. But and he, threw over the tables and so on. Was very angry and upset on behalf of.
Well, yes, that's a good point. It just goes to show that generally we turn the other cheek and we are titiksha, are tolerant, matra sparshas tu konteya. That's in the Bhagavad Gita. But on certain occasions, like when Christ saw that the merchants were selling things in the temple, he became very angry, and he was visibly angry and violent. He stopped this. He wanted to stop it. So according to the time, place, and circumstance, sometimes anger is necessary. It's generally not true, but occasionally it does happen. Like a police force, for example, always has to protect the weak people. And in order to protect, sometimes they have to stop the criminals from doing violent actions. And so violence has to be met with violence sometimes. It's not the usual thing, but that's the nature of policing and administrating a big country like that. The whole world was the country at one time. Any other points? Yes.
Just about violence, we have the example of Lord Chaitanya with the chant Kazi attacked the devotees. He physically attacked them, but Lord Chaitanya didn't necessarily physically attack him, but he, I would say, showed his hoods.
Yes.
He made a civil disobedience movement.
Well, it's like when Prabhupada was acting. It's very similar. He took action, but there was a kind of a compromise that was kind of finally admitted. It was in opposition to the order, and he won. But there was a bit of a compromise. So it sort of happened in Lord Chaitanya's time too. He was teaching that we can be sort of opposed, but we don't have to necessarily be violent. But followers of Lord Chaitanya, like when Jagayan Madai attacked Haridas Thakur and others violently, they were reprimanded. Of course, it was a little bit tolerant in that time. Lord Chaitanya is known as the most munificent of all incarnations because he didn't advocate that kind of violence. He was even when people were violent, he showed that you don't have to meet violence with violence. That was what he taught us. But sometimes it's actually necessary. And the acharyas like Srila Prabhupada and his predecessors sometimes were acted in a way that was non-quote, non-Hindu, end quote. There was a case where devotees were fighting for the right to have worship at Bhaktivedanta Manor. I was there part of the time. It went on for something like 10 years. And devotees used to say a prayer in unison every day I don't know the exact wording, but words to the effect that, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please allow us to worship you in this temple. The Pandavasenas were very active in protesting against this. They took their protest to the then Watford District Council, the local government who was opposing the use of public worship at Bhaktivedanta Manor. But they were not violent. The devotees at Bhaktivedanta put on a drama. Jai Krishna probably organized it. I don't know who organized it. But it was a drama to show that the people who were opposing public worship were not doing so because it was technically wrong, but there was another element. There was another dimension, sort of a prejudicial dimension to it. And so in a way they were kind of making out that these people were doing things that were not proper. And there was a group in the audience that were part of a Hindu organization, and their guru was present too, who just got up and left in the middle of the performance. And we later found out that the reason they walked out is they said, this is very un-Hindu, very non-Hindu, to characterize such people as doing the wrong thing. So that the spirit of fighting was always there, even after Prabhupada departed this world. And that was after Prabhupada left, that incident. I was there. Not I was there, but I heard about it. And that's what happened. That actually happened. So I think we've gone a little bit over time. So I think we'll end there. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.